Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaskaram. Welcome to the second lecture, The Village of Kuchipudi. In the first lecture, we have understood that Kuchipudi is the name of a village in the Krishna district of Andhra Pradesh, which is near to the centers of Vijayawada and also Machilipatnam. There are many other Kuchipudis in the Andhra region, and the dance drama tradition that has come from this place is specifically called as Kuchipudi Bhagavatam. And no other dance form takes its name from the village that it has come from, except Kuchipudi. So, because Kuchipudi is the name of the village, there is a lot of history that is attached to the village of Kuchipudi. And the dance form has completely taken over the name of the place that it belongs to. So what is the history that is attached to this village? How did this village come into picture, or how did it become concretized? All right, we'll see all that in this lecture. Let us understand that apart from Kuchipudi, there are other Pudis that are there in the Andhra region, like Pedapudi, Barlapudi, Mullapudi, Yaddanapudi. So when you observe all these names, the suffix is of Pudi, which means a village, that we have understood in the lecture 1. And the names of the villages being Pudi, you see them a lot of Pudis or villages emerging with the name Pudi during the time of the Nizams who ruled this place, the Nizams of the Golconda. All right. And near to Kuchipudi, there is a place called Machilipatnam, or also called as Bandar, which is also an administrative place for the Nizams to see what is happening in the coastal Andhra region. Machilipatnam was their administrative center, not a capital, but an administrative center. All right. So you see a lot of Pudis during the Nizams period that ruled from the Golconda. All right. And this village of Kuchipudi, which is in the Krishna district, has around 200 families who all belong to the traditional families of Kuchipudi. Now, what are the traditional families of Kuchipudi? What are their names? We'll see in the further sections of this lecture. Now, Krishna and Godavari belt have a plethora of performing arts. Not just Krishna and Godavari. Students, if you see the entire human civilization on this planet, all right, be it the Indus Valley civilization or the Roman civilization, whatever civilizations that have happened, there is one common point with all the human civilizations, that is, the civilizations always happened on the river beds, on the river banks. Why? For the mere reason that the lands that have the rivers are extremely fertile. Right. Shall I ask you a question? If you are feeling hungry, will you talk about Natya Shastra or will you search for food? Definitely food. All of us. When your stomach is full, when your survival is not a danger, then you start thinking about the other aspects of life. When every day morning when you wake up and your only job is to go hunt for animals and search for food, every day you are on a survival mode. You don't think about, oh, how beautiful the rain is, oh, how beautiful the moon is. No, you're always worried which animal will attack you. All right. So you're always on a survival mode. But once the agriculture has started, once people moved away from the forests, from a forest tribal hunters to the agricultural communities which happened on the river banks, you had lot of food in availability. You could also store a lot of food for 3 to 4 months. So you were not on a survival mode because every day you need not worry about what to eat to keep yourself alive and from whom to protect to keep yourself alive. And so because of this, what happened? Man started thinking about the other aspects of nature. Why is the sky so blue? Who is God? How was I created? How can I express my emotions and feelings? How can art be? How to draw myself? So all these comes into picture when you are not on a survival mode. So all the human civilizations that always moved forward had the rivers which played a very major role. All right. And similar to arts. In the Andhra region, especially near the banks of the Krishna and the Godavari, you have a plethora of performing arts, both music, dance, and of course the theatre. The drama was very much vibrant and culturally very accessible to the people because the lands are very fertile. Agriculture is their main occupation. Now the Kuchipudi that belongs to the Krishna district, which is exactly on the banks of the Krishna river, and in and around Kuchipudi also, is extremely culturally vibrant. All right. And the Kuchipudi Bhagavatulu or the Kuchipudi Bhagavata Melam, which have come into picture, Melam means troop. They used to move in, group, and they used to perform in places traveling from one place to the other. It is also called as Divisima Taluk Kuchipudi. Now the Kuchipudi Bhagavata Melam has exclusively male performers. Today when you think about Kuchipudi, everywhere you see 85% of the women performing. Men are only hardly 15 to 20%. But can you believe that before the 20th century, Kuchipudi was only performed by men. Women never came into picture. It was only in the last century, hardly maybe 100 or 150 years back, that women started performing Kuchipudi or started rather learning Kuchipudi. But today you see 85% are women. Women played an extremely major role in the propagation and the popularization of the Kuchipudi dance. And with women came the solo repertoire of Kuchipudi. Well, let's not discuss that in this lecture. We'll see that in the further lectures to come. But yes, as of now, please understand that the Kuchipudi Bhagavata Melam had only Brahmin men performing in troops called as Melam. Melam comes from the word Melavimpu, which means harmony. All right. So there needs to be a lot of harmony in that group, a lot of synchronization in the troop. Now, these traditional families are because they perform these dance dramas from the Bhagavata Purana or the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the Telugu translation of the Bhagavata Purana by Bammera Potana. They are being performed, these stories, from generation to generation since centuries. It's sort of a traditional activity that is attached to their families. All right. How many families are there? We'll see very soon. All right. And because they perform from Bhagavata Purana, they are called as Bhagavatulu. Right. And until 1930s, they only performed in and around Kuchipudi. They never moved a lot of distance away from the Kuchipudi village. They performed in Kuchipudi, performed in and around the villages of Kuchipudi, because the transportation facilities were not so much. Right. You go to a very long distance and perform, right? Way back those days, it's very difficult. Now, what I'm talking is about almost 200 years or 150 years back also. Almost until 100 years, they didn't go much distance. They only performed in and around Kuchipudi. And from the 1930s, you see the Kuchipudi family actors, the Brahmin men called as Bhagavatulu, moving a little more longer because of the transportation facilities and performing Kuchipudi Bhagavata Melam or Kuchipudi Bhagavatam. And can you believe, I didn't mention this point, for a lot of period of time, Kuchipudi was called as Kuchipudi Bharatanatyam. Yes, it was called as Kuchipudi Bharatanatyam. This is told by the great scholar of Kuchipudi and of course the dance, drama and dances, Dr. Swapna Sundari. She mentioned in her book that Kuchipudi was for a lot of period called as Kuchipudi Bharatanatyam, which means the Bharatanatyam from the Kuchipudi village. All right. So, and Vedantam Raghavaya Garu, a great traditional family dancer from Kuchipudi and a great well-known director of the Telugu cinemas way back in 1940s, and Mahankali Subbarao Garu, they were the people who performed outside the horizons of the Krishna district in the 1930s. And with the name Prabhakar Dance Party in 1940s, the same Vedantam Raghavaya Garu and Pasumarthi Krishnamurti Garu, another well-known Kuchipudi traditional family dancer and a very famous movie choreographer who worked for Telugu and Tamil cinema from Madras. Both of them almost traveled the entire country in the 1940s with the name Prabhakar Dance Party. All right. And then until 1950s, families stayed in the village of Kuchipudi and then migrated. So until 1950s, the traditional families were very much intact, sticked to the, the length and breadth of the Kuchipudi village. They never moved out of it. They just performed, came back, their houses were there, their lands to do agriculture were there. Agriculture also was their main occupation. They were Brahmin Vaidikis and Smartha Brahmins. So Brahmin Vaidikis means the people who learn the Vedas and who recite the scriptures. All right. So the Brahmin Kuchipudi Bhagavatulu were Vaidikis. All right. And agriculture was also one of their main occupations. And later on a very serious note, when these Kuchipudi Yakshaganams became extremely popular and super commercial successful, they completely shifted their profession to dance. Otherwise, they were doing both. So on season, they were doing agriculture, and off season, they were reciting, dancing, singing the stories from the Bhagavata Purana. All right. And coming to the history of Kuchipudi, the inhabitants of the Kuchipudi village and many scholars believe that this village of Kuchipudi was given as an inam or a gift by the Nizam Tanisha, who belonged to the Kuli Qutub Shahi dynasty, Abul Hasan. Abul Hasan Tanisha, I think all of you might have known him. He was the same Abul Hasan who has encouraged the construction of the Bhadrachala Rama temple during the time of Ramadasu or Kancharla Gopanna. All right. So in Bhadrachalam, the Rama temple that you see was also done or constructed because of the patronage of Abdul Hasan Tanisha. Now, though he is a Muslim king, he always had this, a secular vision for the subjects that he had. He always encouraged Hindu arts, Hindu god, Hindu religion and Hindu temples also. And it was the same Abul Hasan Tanisha who has gifted this village of Kuchipudi as an inam to the Kuchipudi actors. All right, so that is the first thing. How did it happen? Now, as I said before in the very beginning of the lecture, Abdul Hasan Tanisha, the Nizam of the Golconda, used to very frequently travel to Machilipatnam for administrative purposes, stay there, look at the administrative things and go back to Golconda. All right. So one time what had happened, when he came to Machilipatnam, which is near to the Kuchipudi village in the Krishna district, he happened to watch a performance by a few Kuchipudi actors. Kuchipudi Bhagavatulu, precisely, that can be termed. So when he saw their performance, he was so impressed by the technique that they had, the smartness that they showed while presenting the stories, and the way they presented, they sang the songs. He was so impressed that he asked, what is it that that they need to keep this art more preserved, and what is the help that they need to propagate it. And on this note, he gave away the entire 600 acres of this Agraharam called as Kuchipudi as a gift to them, telling that now you have the entire rights on this land, you can do agriculture, you can build your houses, settle there permanently and teach as many as you want and propagate this form, and the agriculture that you do will give you a lot of strength for your survival. All right, and a sanad was given on the name with the mohar of the Abdul Hasan Tanisha. So this is how the village of the Kuchipudi was given as a gift to the inhabitants of the village. Now the very first documentation of the Kuchipudi village is not in this sanad that Abul Hasan Tanisha has given. It was in 1678. All right, the gift was given in 1678, which is the 17th century. But the very first documentation of the name Kuchipudi village, you see, is in the 16th century, the early parts of the 16th century, during the rule of the great Vijayanagara Empire. Vijayanagara Empire had a lot of patronage towards art. Like the Chola Empire, Vijayanagara Empire's rule was also a golden period for art and architecture, and also the Vaishnavism being very prevalent during that time. All right. So, the very first documentation of the Kuchipudi village, you see in a document called as Machupalli Kaifiyat. That is the very first time, or rather something which is the oldest among all the existing documents, that you see the name of the Kuchipudi for the very first time. Of course, scholars like Arudra Garu, who is also a very famous lyricist in the old Telugu cinema, he opined that the Kuchipudi village that is mentioned in the Machupalli Kaifiyat is not the Krishna district Kuchipudi but the Guntur district Kuchipudi. But when you look at the entire historicity and the entire story of how it was performed and from where did they come from and what did they perform and all, it's clear that the Kuchipudi that is mentioned in the Machupalli Kaifiyat belongs to the Krishna district of Kuchipudi, and that is the oldest of all the existing documents that talk about the historicity of Kuchipudi. We'll see about Machupalli Kaifiyat also in the upcoming lectures. That belongs to 1502 under the rule of Veera Narasimharaya of the Tuluva dynasty of the Vijayanagara Empire. All right. Now, what is the proof that Abul Hasan Tanisha has given this sanad? Apart from the oral traditions and the oral stories that are told by the local villagers of the Kuchipudi village or the traditional families, what is the documentational evidence that Abul Hasan Tanisha has given? Now, what happened in 1763, which is in the 18th century, an application has come from a few traditional families to the government, all right, that they wanted a solution for the share of the Agraharam, that this family, this belongs to them, this belongs to them. So the share deed has to be clearly mentioned because there was a internal dispute regarding the share of the Agraharam. So in 1763, an application has come to the government. Now, who was ruling that place? Whose government was it? The Asaf Zahi's government was ruling that place at that point of time. So what did the king Asaf Zahi II did? He nominated two people called as Mosalikanti Kamoji Pantulu and Kandregula Jogi Pantulu. The documentation is still there. We see a very detailed explanation of these in Professor Anuradha Jannalgadda Garu's PhD thesis titled Traditions and Innovations in Kuchipudi Dance, that belongs to around 1996. All right. So Asaf Zahi II, he nominated Kamoji Pantulu and Jogi Pantulu and told that let this internal dispute be settled and let the share be, documented on a piece of paper regarding the Agraharam. And then after this application has come, the dispute was settled and 15 traditional families who claimed themselves to be a part of this Agraharam were given rights on the share of the Kuchipudi Agraharam. And what are the 15 families? Bhagavatula, Bokka, Darbha, Hari, Josyula, Mahankali, Pasumarti, Peddibotla, Polepeddi, Vallabha Josyula, Vedantam, Vempati, Vemu, Venukunti and Yeleshwarapu. So these 15 families, these are the surnames of the families, all right. So in south of India, especially in the Andhra region, we have surnames. Unlike in Tamil Nadu, where the father's name becomes the surname, in Andhra, we have surnames that come in front of our names. So these are the surnames of the 15 traditional families that have the share of the Agraharam during the time of Asafzahi II. And then almost after 100 years or a little more than 100 years, in 1895, when the East India Company was ruling us, the Nizams, the Muslim invasion, everything got over. The East India Company has colonized us, and during that time in 1895, the British officials asked these people, what is the proof that this land belongs to you? Because they wanted proofs from all the landowners regarding the land revenue. All right, some administrative dealings that they were looking into. So when the British officials in 1895 asked these people, it seems, now this is all documented, it seems that they presented a 1744 CE belonging firman or a document that was given to them by the zamindar of that particular place as a part of the Stotriya Dharma Shasanam. They have presented that also as a proof that a zamindar of that place as a Stotriya Dharma Shasanam has given them that Agraharam. And along with that, they have also given or provided a document from 1795 that talks about Abul Hasan Tanisha's sanad. All right. So they had enough ample proofs with them that this Agraharam was given to them as a gift by the royals. All right. As I said before, the agriculture is also a major occupation of the Kuchipudi Brahmin Vaidikis, who were smarthas, who believed in the Advaita Siddhanta of Adi Shankaracharya. And in the beginning of their course of performing Bhagavata Mela Nataka, the women were always there at the house taking care of the families, the young children and the old people, and also the agriculture. The men were a part of the agricultural process that was there, and off season they used to go travel to the nearby places and perform the Bhagavata Puranam. All right. Now with these 15 families or the few families that were there in the village, what did they do? They multiplied themselves by marrying into their own community. Let's say a Vempati man was married to a Vedantam girl. A Vedantam man was married to a Bhagavatula girl. So you see marriages happening between these own families. Now today when you go to Kuchipudi village, you see everyone is related to everyone in the some or the other way. All right, in Telugu they use this word as Birakai Pichu. Means all of them are related to all of them in some or the other way. And that is exactly how they retained the art within themselves, not going outside or, being, changes happening in at the very early stages. They married themselves inside the community. I mean, the girls or the boys from the same community. They multiplied in the families, and that is how they kept their community very intact. The art within them was extremely intact. And whatever developments they wanted to do, whatever innovations they wanted to do, they always made it in the communities. And they never had a second thought about also taking influences from the other dance drama traditions. Let's say Pagativesham. Okay, Pagativesham also belongs to a place which is very near to Kuchipudi. Now, Kuchipudi Brahmin performers never had a second thought about, oh, why should I go learn from them? No, it was not like that. They always had that open mind to innovate themselves, go to them, learn what is good in them, and give what is good in theirs also as a mutual understanding, and incorporate that into their dance drama tradition and also perform that. They also performed Pagativesham. Kuchipudi Brahmin Bhagavatulu also performed Pagativesham. There were so many actors who were famous for their Balinta Vesham, Dadinamma Vesham, which are all a part of Pagativeshams. All right. So there is always, a mutual give and take policy in terms of influence is concerned for the Kuchipudi families. All right. And in terms of the village of Kuchipudi, now you have many famous culturally vibrant centers even in and around Kuchipudi. Like say you have Mova, just around 2 kilometers from Kuchipudi, where which Mova is famous for the Kshetraya, the place from where the great poet Kshetraya, Vagyekara Kshetraya has come. And then you have Kaja in the Guntur district, where you see Narayana Tirtha of Krishna Leela Tarangini coming from. And you have Ghantasala, which is a very, very popular Buddhist Arama place. And you have many other literary geniuses that are coming up from all these places. And we'll see about all the, the kingdoms and the literary geniuses that have come into picture when we go to the lecture Natya and Nritya in the Andhra region, which is the next lesson. All right. As of now, please understand that Bhakti movement has played a very important role in the molding and the structuring of the Kuchipudi Bhagavata Mela, because it was during the Bhakti movement and especially during the period of the Bhakti movement where Vaishnavism was flourishing. Because in the beginning it was Shaivism which was flourishing, and then came the Vijayanagara Empire, and because of that the Vaishnavism was flourishing. Bhagavata Puranam became a very important text for all the artists. When I say all, it means the entire length and breadth of India. Not just South India, not just Andhra region. You see anywhere from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, you see the Bhagavata Purana becoming one of the most sought after text for the stories, for the performing arts especially. Why? Because the stories in the Bhagavata Purana have ample scope for the actors to project varied emotions. You have all sorts of emotions in the Bhagavata Purana, and very importantly, not the complete Bhagavata Purana, and very importantly, the Krishna stories. The Krishna cult has become so prominent during the Bhagavata movement that almost 95% of the poets and the theatre personalities or the dancers or the musicians were only talking about Krishna. All right, of course, Rama, Shiva, Durga, Shakti, all these were there. Shaivism, Shaktiism, everything was there. But the Krishna cult, the Radha Krishna love, the Rukmini Krishna love, and the the Krishna Satyabhama love, all these were so famous. It was a sort of like the Krishna cult that was there during the Bhakti movement period. And of course, Kuchipudi Bhagavata Mela was also not an exception, but they performed stories from the Bhagavata Purana, which was translated into Telugu by Bammera Potana, called as Srimad Bhagavatam. So because they performed stories from Srimad Bhagavatam, the troupe was called as Kuchipudi Bhagavata Mela, and they were called as Bhagavatulu. We have learnt that in the first lecture also. Now, the major attraction in the repertoire of the village is Bhama Kalapam. What is Bhama Kalapam? Why is it so famous? What is it all about? What are the different librettos that are there? What is the philosophy? What is the story? What is the plot that is there? We'll all see it in the upcoming lectures. And we cannot talk about Kuchipudi skipping Siddhendra Yogi. Bhama Kalapam is believed to be authored by Siddhendra Yogi, and there is an oath that Siddhendra Yogi has taken from the villages of the Kuchipudi Agraharam that they would pass on the tradition of Bhama Kalapam to all the coming further generations, and not just that, about their performances also. Now let me not reveal that in this lecture. We'll see about the oath by Siddhendra Yogi and of course the Bhama Kalapam in the upcoming lectures. Alright. And yes, young Brahmin boys were taught by Siddhendra Yogi of the Kuchipudi village. There are so many legends that are attached to the story of Siddhendra Yogi. Now in the lecture, when we talk about the legends of Siddhendra Yogi, we will see how Siddhendra Yogi got in touch with the young Brahmin boys of this Kuchipudi village and taught them Bhama Kalapam. We'll see all those legends. And the Ramalingeshwara Swami temple in the Kuchipudi village, where Ramalingeshwara Swami and the deity Bala Tripura Sundari are the village deities of Kuchipudi and the Mukhya deities of, or the prominent deities of the Kuchipudi dance drama tradition. Every Kuchipudi performance starts with a prayer to Bala Tripura Sundari, and she is believed to be the Adabadachu, or the sister kind, to all the villagers of the Kuchipudi, who is protecting the village, protecting the dance drama tradition, and protecting the dancers. Alright. And then the Kuchipudi young Brahmin boys and the men used to perform this Bhagavata Mela Nataka, and they were given role according to their individual capacity and characters. How did the interludes come into picture? How did the solo tradition slowly develop? We will also see that in the upcoming lectures. And the Kuchipudi Yakshaganams that they used to perform, how did the Yakshaganam become a reference material for the solo repertoire to eventually develop, will also be discussed in the subsequent lessons. Alright. So, after which we will discuss about the Kuchipudi Agraharam. What are the different places that are in and around Kuchipudi? Why is it famous for? In the part 2 of this